It is one of the most powerful and explosive metaphors in American law. A wall of separation between church and state. For millions, this phrase is the First Amendment. It's the bedrock of American secularism, the high and impregnable barrier that protects the government from religious influence and, just as importantly, protects religious freedom from government control. It's the legal line that keeps prayer out of public schools, Ten Commandments monuments off of courthouse lawns, and the government out of your personal beliefs. It feels as foundational as the Constitution itself. But what if I told you that the phrase wall of separation appears nowhere in the Constitution? What if I told you it doesn't appear in the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence? What if it was written by a sitting president in a private letter to a nervous religious minority years after the Constitution was ratified? And what if, for the first 150 years of American history, that wall was little more than a forgotten metaphor until the Supreme Court resurrected it in the 20th century and turned it into a legal revolution? Today, we are going to the source. We will trace the surprising, controversial, and deeply misunderstood history of the wall of separation, a phrase that has arguably defined modern America more than any other. To find the true origins of our church-state debate, we have to start not with the famous phrase, but with the document it supposedly explains, the First Amendment. The religious clauses of the First Amendment are surprisingly short, just 16 words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's it. There's no mention of a wall or separation. It's a two-part command. First, the Establishment Clause. Congress can't set up an official, state-sponsored church like the Church of England, which the colonists had just fought a war to escape. Second, the Free Exercise Clause. Congress can't stop you from practicing your own faith. And let's not forget what's in the rest of the Constitution. Nothing. The document is famously, and for its time, radically secular. There is no mention of God, Jesus, or Christianity. And Article 6 explicitly states that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. This meant a person's faith or lack thereof could not be a barrier to holding federal office. This was the framework the founders built. It was a framework of disestablishment and protection. But the wall metaphor, the one that would come to define this framework, hadn't been built yet. For that, we have to go to the year 1801. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, is now the third president of the United States. And he receives a letter from a group of Baptists in Danbury, Connecticut. To understand this letter, we have to understand that the Danbury Baptists were a terrified religious minority. In their state of Connecticut, the Congregationalist Church was the official, state-sponsored, tax-supported religion. The Baptists were dissenters. They were outsiders. And they were worried. They wrote to the new president as a people who are sensible that the national government has no power to control religious exercises. They were looking for reassurance. On January 1st, 1802, Jefferson wrote them back. His reply was a carefully crafted political and philosophical statement. He celebrated with them that the American people, through the First Amendment, had declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And then he deployed the metaphor that would change history. He wrote, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." This was Jefferson's interpretation of the First Amendment's goal. He was, in effect, reassuring the Baptists that this wall was in place to protect them, the religious minority, from the power of the government. The wall was a barrier to keep the federal government out of their churches. But here's the crucial part. This was a private letter. It was a piece of presidential correspondence, an eloquent metaphor. It was not law. And for the next 150 years, it was largely forgotten, a historical curiosity known only to scholars. The Supreme Court in the 19th century largely ignored it. The wall was not a legal doctrine. It was just a letter. So when did this private metaphor become the law of the land? For that, we have to jump forward to 1947, to a case that, on its face, seems to have nothing to do with it. Everson v. Board of Education. The case was simple. A town in New Jersey was using public funds to reimburse parents for the cost of busing their children to school. And this included parents who sent their children to private Catholic religious schools. A taxpayer named Arch Everson sued, claiming this was a violation of the Establishment Clause. It was the government using tax money to support a religion. The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, delivered a ruling that would change everything. Writing for the majority, Justice Hugo Black, a deep admirer of Jefferson, reached back into history, pulled that 1802 letter from obscurity, and planted it firmly into American constitutional law. He wrote, "The First Amendment has erected a wall of separation between church and state. That wall must be kept high and impregnable. We could not approve the slightest breach." With these words, a 150-year-old metaphor was suddenly reborn as the central, guiding principle for all future First Amendment law. The wall was now the official test. But here is the wild, mind-bending irony of the case. After building this high and impregnable wall, Justice Black and the majority proceeded to rule that the New Jersey busing program was perfectly constitutional. They argued that busing children was a public safety measure, like providing police or fire protection, and that it was neutral, offered to all students, regardless of their religion. So, in the very same case that created the wall of separation as a legal standard, the Supreme Court immediately punched a hole in it. It set the stage for the next 75 years of endless, ferocious legal battles. The Everson case didn't settle the debate. It started the modern debate. It gave both sides their weapon. From 1947 onward, the wall of separation became the battlefield. Every major church. State case became a fight over just how high and impregnable that wall should be. In the 1960s, the Supreme Court used the wall to strike down mandatory, organized prayer in public schools, Eniel v. Vitale, and mandatory Bible readings, Abingdon School District v. Schempp. This, for separationists, was the wall doing its job, protecting a captive audience of public school students from religious coercion. But for accommodationists, those who believe the government should accommodate religion, not be hostile to it, these rulings were a travesty. They argued the court was misusing Jefferson's metaphor, turning a barrier meant to prevent a national church into a weapon to scrub all religious heritage from public life. This conflict defines America to this day. Is a Ten Commandments monument on a courthouse lawn a crack in the wall? Or is it a harmless acknowledgement of our legal history? Is a nativity scene on a town hall's lawn an establishment of Christianity? Or is it a cultural celebration? Is the phrase "in God we trust" on our money, or "under God in our pledge," a violation of the wall? Or is it what the courts call ceremonial deism, phrases that have lost their religious meaning and are now just patriotic slogans? The entire, bitter, and ongoing American culture war over religion in public life is, at its core, a debate about the height and location of a wall that doesn't technically exist in our Constitution, but was built by a president in a letter and then imported into law by a Supreme Court justice in 1947. So, we are left with a profound and deeply divisive legacy. Jefferson's wall was almost certainly intended as a one-way barrier to protect the people from the government. It has since been interpreted as a two-way barrier, also protecting the government from the influence of religion. And this brings us to the great debate for today. Is the wall of separation, as the Supreme Court defined it, a brilliant and necessary legal doctrine that has protected American pluralism and kept us from the religious wars that tore Europe apart? Is it the very thing that has allowed hundreds of faiths to flourish here in a way they can nowhere else? Or is it a profound historical and legal misreading? A judicial invention that took a simple metaphor out of context and weaponized it, leading to a half-century of needless hostility, misunderstanding, and an attempt to secularize a nation that is, and always has been, overwhelmingly religious. This isn't a simple question of history. It's a question about who we are as a nation. Let me know what you think, respectfully, in the comments below. Does this wall protect us, or does it divide us? If you found this deep dive into the hidden history of a single powerful phrase fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our laws and beliefs. Thanks for watching.